Welcome everyone. Tonight we are recording, so if anyone does not want to be on the recorded version of this, now's your time to leave. We have two special guests with us for our first virtual homecoming as we adjust with our COVID-19. My name is Karen Lewis and I am the Associate Vice President for University Advancement, and we welcome you to our first virtual homecoming. I'd like to thank our special guests this evening, Renee Steinke and Nicole Melleby. Today we're going to have a special discussion with you, and we're pleased to explore the power of story with our very own Renee Steinke, the director of the MFA in Creative Writing. Dr. Renee Steinke is the author of 3 novels. Her most recent novel, Friendswood, was named one of National Public Radio's Great Reads of 2014. Darren Strauss's called it a large-hearted, big-brained book. Steinke is the recipient of a 2016 Guggenheim Fellowship. Holy Skirts, a finalist for the National Book Award. Her first novel is The Fires. In addition to serving as the director of the MFA program in creative writing at Fairleigh Dickinson University, Renee teaches in the undergrad and graduate programs in the School of the Arts. Nicole Melleby, a born and bred Jersey girl with a passion for storytelling, is an award-winning author of novels for young adults and children. Nicole studied in our MFA in creative writing at Fairleigh Dickinson University and also teaches creative writing and literature at a state university. At this time, we're going to ask everybody to turn off their cameras, which it looks like you've already done. So you've been to some of our events before, it seems. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation where Renee will ask folks to submit their questions in the chat, and we'll be more than happy to take your questions. And also we'll be providing the links for you in the chat as well. If you'd like to order the books that Nicole has out there, we encourage you to go out and buy them and tell your friends to buy her books. We will also be promoting the other events that we have going on for the rest of the weekend for homecoming. So if you haven't registered for the other events, we encourage you to do so as well. So let's join Renee and Nicole for an insightful conversation this evening on how literature can help young minds navigate difficult and personal topics. Take it away.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Thanks for coming. Really excited to talk to one of our wonderful alums of the MFA program, Nicole Melleby. She's a beautiful writer, as you will see tonight when she reads a bit from her new book and talks about what she's been doing. So Nicole.
Yes.
You are the author of 3 novels for middle grade readers: Hurricane Season, In the Role of Bree Hutchins, and How to Become a Planet. All of these, we have links in the chat so you can purchase those books, and I encourage you to seek them out as soon as possible. Before we get going, Nicole, I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about each of the books.
Yeah, definitely. So Hurricane Season was my first book. I have it right here if you want to take a look. And Hurricane Season came out last year. So all my books deal with topics like depression and LGBTQ children as well. So Hurricane Season is a story of the main character, Fig. She lives with her single dad, and he, at the start of the novel, is undiagnosed bipolar. And so they're kind of struggling with that. And to try and understand her dad, who used to be a musician, Fig actually takes an art class and ends up kind of spiraling over Vincent van Gogh while trying to, understand and connect with her dad. So that's Hurricane Season. this one as well. In the role of Bree Hutchins. This one actually just came out in June. So Bree is, as you can see, a Catholic schoolgirl who has an already complicated relationship with her mom that's made even more complicated in the face of her mom's faith and her first crush on another girl. And then How to Become a Planet, which is my third book. It doesn't come out until May 2021. So this is an advanced reader I just got. But it is about the main character. Her name is Pluto. She just recently got a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. So she's kind of struggling with the aftermath of now having to be on medication and kind of understand who she is in the face of that diagnosis. So those are my 3 middle grade books.
Thanks, Nicole. I should say that Nicole graduated from the MFA program in 2016. So she's incredibly prolific. She's written 3 wonderful books, and we'll have them all come out within 4 years. I'm not good at math. 5 years of graduating from the MFA program. And I had the pleasure of reading an advanced copy of How to Become a Planet, and I just finished it in tears. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And Nicole, you have such a lucid and compelling writing style. And I love the way you use metaphors of the planets and the weather and art to talk about your characters' emotional states. It's just beautiful, beautiful writing. And I wondered if you could just read just for a few minutes from How to Become a Planet.
Yeah, definitely. So this is my very first time reading from this one, so bear with me. I'm actually going to read from the second chapter. The first one's a bit of a prologue of sorts, so I think this is a better place to start. So I'm going to just read this chapter for you guys here. So when it finally came after 180 long days, the first day of summer break didn't matter to Pluto. The countdown she'd made with Meredith still read 34 days until freedom, because Pluto hadn't been to school in over a month. She hadn't had to worry about end of the year pool parties or endless have a great summers or Meredith begging her to just be her friend again. And finally, she didn't need to worry about school calling home, asking where she was, asking when she was coming, making her mom's voice tremble as she spoke into the phone. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know what to do either. Instead, what Pluto did have to worry about was that her mom was already out of the shower, shuffling around in the bathroom they shared, nearly ready to start the day. The hall light was on, bleeding into Pluto's bedroom, making the thick purple curtains that blocked out the morning sun null and void. If she had a bedroom door, she would close it to block out the light and the sound of her mom as she hummed while she got dressed. But Pluto did not have a bedroom door and hadn't had a bedroom door for a little over a month now. Her mom stuck her head in the doorway. Hey, shooting star, she said, words mumbled as she spoke around the toothbrush in her mouth. You're with me today, kid, so start making some moves. Pluto and her mom both knew she would not be making some moves. Pluto resented the fact that her mom even suggested it, that her mom went about her morning as if nothing had changed inside Pluto, as if an endless month in bed could suddenly come to stop without trouble. When she didn't move, Plu, I'm serious, as if that made a difference. Pluto was serious too. She needed to stay in bed under her thick purple blanket covered in little white stars. Her mom had picked out that bed set the moment Pluto outgrew the small wooden crib with the solar system mobile. The blanket was warm and it was soft, and it was not something she was willing that morning or any other to give up. The bed shifted as her mom climbed in, smelling like the Taylor Swift perfume Pluto had bought for her for Christmas last year. Her mom's arms wrapped around Pluto's middle, holding her close against the scratchy fabric of one of the low-cut tops her mom always wore that Pluto hated. Her mom's breath tickled her ear. I don't want to pay for a sitter, Pluto. I want you to come with me. Pluto felt a familiar feeling rise from her stomach up into her throat, one that made her want to scream and cry and argue, if only she weren't so tired. Tears came anyway. 12-year-olds couldn't stay in bed all day on their own, no matter how much they might need to. If she was older, an adult, she would stay in bed and no one could force her to do anything, a fixed planet around which everything else moved while she ignored it. But for now, Pluto was the moon and her mom was the planet she was forced to orbit. Even if that meant being pulled out of bed, every inch of her silently protesting, while an invisible rubber band that kept her body strapped down was yanked taut as her mom tugged her into sitting. There's my girl, she said, as Pluto blinked at her slowly. Her mom's eyes were gray, like clouds during a rainstorm, and while they were always so gentle when they looked at Pluto, they hadn't wrinkled at the corners with a genuine smile in what felt like forever. That, though, was comforting, because Pluto could not remember the last time she really smiled either. Get dressed, her mom said simply, as if she weren't asking Pluto to do something tremendous that would take tremendous effort on Pluto's part. I'll go make you something to eat. It's the first day of summer, Plu. It's time to start having fun again. She left Pluto alone to fight the urge to curl into herself and sleep. Standing hurt, looking over at the Challenger book still placed on her desk with a ripped spine hurt. She picked it up, and the cover and first handful of pages slid away from the rest. Even broken, it was heavy in her hand, which was heavy on her arm, which was heavy on her shoulder. Gravity, it seemed, was extra hard on Pluto. In fairness, gravity had been harder on the Challenger. The shuttle had fallen from the sky before it was even close to orbit. It all happened so quickly, the smoke and the explosion and the destruction. Pluto often wondered about what that moment had been like, the one after everything was okay, but before everything was not okay, where the Challenger and the 7 lives on it were somewhere in between not okay, but not okay. Pluto called the Hayden Planetarium Astronomy Question and Answer hotline to ask once. After a brief moment of absolute silence, the voice on the other end of the phone quickly launched into a detailed account of all the mechanics of why the Challenger didn't have a successful takeoff, which didn't answer Pluto's question at all. She placed the broken book back on her desk and reached for her phone instead, the one she got for her 10th birthday just for emergencies, but mostly used to download podcasts and, at the time, text back and forth with Meredith. There was a notification that one of her favorite astronomy podcasts had a new episode about meteoroids, comets, and asteroids waiting to download. Pluto knew a lot about meteoroids, comets, and asteroids already. She knew that when objects sped into Earth's atmosphere, the heat produces a streak of light from the trail of particles they leave in their wake. She looked over at her bedroom wall, the little white specks left in the gray paint from where she'd yanked off the plastic stars one by one a month ago. Hearing her favorite podcast narrator in her head, like an asteroid, Pluto Jean Timony leaves a trail of her own destruction in her wake. Pluto, her mom called, don't forget your meds. The little orange bottle sat right on top of her desk next to the broken book. Take one with food, take half in the morning, take one as needed. Depression and anxiety, 2 words, one brand new diagnosis.
Wow, thank you. You have to imagine virtual applause because that's how Zoom works, but virtual applause here.
I can pretend that like no one's actually listening to me.
So Nicole, as you and I know, novels are really difficult to write.
Yes.
Maybe more difficult for me than for you, but they're very difficult to write. They require a lot of devotion and planning and thinking and revision. But writing for young adults and children requires its own kind of focus and imagination. And what strikes me about your writing is you write about such complex situations, in this latest book, Anxiety and Depression, but you never seem like you're talking down to your reader or dumbing things down for these, these teens. And that takes real talent and real skill. And I wondered if you could talk about how you approach your writing for this audience.
Yeah, I think sometimes when people hear, writing for children, they almost think that it's simpler, and that's absolutely not the case. If anything, I think that writing for children makes an author have to be more honest, and kind of, you're not just, you're more aware, I think, of the audience than you might be if you're writing for adults and whatnot, because you're really thinking about who's reading this book and why. At least I am, anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot about writing with. I mean, first of all, children will be the first to call you out if if you don't sound true, if you don't sound real. They have no qualms about being the first person to come up to you and say, actually, that's not how we talk. That's not how they'll be there. I've gone on school visits and you get more honest and brutal feedback than I've ever gotten from an editor or anything like that, because they really they want you to know what they think about your writing, and they want you to know I'm not worth less because I'm younger. They want to be taken seriously, and I think that you need to show that through your work when writing through kids, that you are taking them just as seriously as you would when writing for adults. So the craft's different, but I don't ever write down, or I don't try and simplify things. when it comes to writing about, you know, depression and anxiety. I think a lot of people sometimes think that, you know, it's an adult issue, and it's not an adult issue. It's just as much a kid issue. So I kind of approach it in the same way. It's just, you know, thinking about it on their level and what they're going through, more so than actually dumbing down the topic at all. It's really about being as honest as possible when telling a story for them.
Yeah,
the only thing that is different is when writing for kids, you also have to keep in mind what we call gatekeepers, so teachers and parents and librarians, the ones who, you know, my audience of middle graders, they're not the ones for the most part going into a store and picking out their own books. They're hearing it from their teachers, from their librarians, their parents are buying the books for them. So a lot of the time when you're writing something, I always remember for my first book, which is, you know, is largely about, you know, a relationship between a father and daughter, but it also has a lot of queer content as well. So I remember my editor, I had a joke in one of an early draft, and it was a crude, it was like a he just wants to get in your pants kind of joke. And my editor said, look, like, it's a funny joke. If you want to keep it in, I'll support that. But just know that it could be an excuse for a gatekeeper to keep it, you know, keep this book out of a kid's hand because, you know, and cite a crude joke as the reason. So I ended up taking it out because it just wasn't worth it to me to give anyone a reason to keep the book from getting into the hands of you know, the kids who need it. So that's probably one of the bigger challenges when thinking about writing for young adults. But overall, for me, it's just, you know, tell the story as honest and as open as possible.
When I was talking before about difficulty, I was complimenting you. I was not, I didn't, you know, I agree with you. It's really totally as hard. I have a couple of close friends who write for young adults and children, and I know firsthand how difficult it is, and how tricky it is, and how it really is. It's really a special kind of art. And
you have to look at it like it's a different craft. Like poetry is different than prose, and you know, it's just a different way of writing and telling a story. So like any different, you know, craft, you have to hone it differently.
Yeah, but I meant to compliment you on your naturalness and your prolificness and your ability to be inspired and have all of these ideas. I mean, these are really, they're not just they're really complicated books. So, you know, congratulations, and we're very proud of you. I think I'll go to this question. So the writer Joan Didion said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And I think a lot of people think of stories as entertainment or distractions. And but when you write literature and you're reading literature, you know, we're looking to move beyond that, beyond just entertainment. Entertainment's good, but, you know, wanting to move beyond that. And, you know, recently there have been all of these studies that show how reading fiction can improve your resilience and your even increase your empathy. That reading really works those muscles in your brain. And I know that for me during this pandemic, this stressful time, reading is just, I'm sure this is the same for a lot of people in the audience, like reading has just been a lifeline for me. And certainly your books examine, you know, these big questions for young people. And that, you know, and they're big questions for people who are just probably starting to know how to form questions like, who am I? And who do I love? And how do I live with this overwhelming sadness? And what am I going to do about my mother who's driving me crazy? You know, these are really crucial issues for young people, and your books just go right to the heart of them. So I wondered if you could say, this is a big question, but you're good at big questions. So how do you think of your role as a writer, and why do you think storytelling is important?
So for the first part of the question, I like the way you framed this question. I get it posed a little differently sometimes, where people ask if, you know, I wrote the stories that I needed when I was younger, you know, as a, you know, a queer individual with, you know, a lot of mental illness in my family. You know, so it's always get the question is do you write what you needed? And to some extent, yes, of course. I think, you know, it's something we all kind of do a little bit. But I started thinking a little differently after I started actually meeting the kids, you know, doing school visits and talking to the actual kids who are reading these books, my audience. And they're just so different now than I was. For one, they have the vocabulary to express themselves and to know who they are in ways that I never would have then. They know what they want and what they're looking for in ways that I never did. So when I started sitting down and thinking about that, I think it shaped a lot about what I think, you know, what kind of writer I wanted to be and what I wanted to do for them. And I just kind of wanted to give them that safe place, no matter what kind of shape or form it took. We talk a lot about, you know, windows and mirrors in children's books. So for those who don't know, a window book is a book where, you know, you look outside the window and see, you know, something that isn't necessarily a reflection of you. It's something outside the window that can sort of build empathy there. And then a mirror book is a book that you look into and you're reflected back into it. So I think a lot about that and the kids that I've met and, you know, what is my role to them? Especially, you know, you write these books and then the kids come up to you and they are, again, so honest, and they'll just tell you, you know, their life stories and, you know, what your books mean to them and, you know, how much they need more of it and in what ways. And so, you know, it's moving in a lot of ways. It's a lot of responsibility in others, because again, writing for children, you know, you really have to think about what you're putting out there for them to pick up. Because I think that so easily you can put out the wrong thing, have things not so great for them to take from books. So I think that, you know, I always just want to be that kind of storyteller and that kind of author for my audience, and specifically that, you know, just gives them a place so that they know that, you know, you're not alone. You know, I see you. I know that you're there. This is me trying to give you a place to explore and kind of feel what you need to feel. And I think, you know, to circle around and I guess answer the second part of the question, I think that that's what reading can do and reading should do, especially with kids. And, you know, not everything needs to, you know, you mentioned, you know, books that are just for entertainment, and those are important, of course, too. But I think the lines too are blurring between the two some. But my, you know, my friend Josh writes these fun sci-fi middle grade books, and he always jokes that his are just like, you know, the sweet candy on top of, you know, all the serious stuff that I write. And you know, I think that they all have a place and they all serve the same purpose for kids, and it's just to give them whatever sort of outlet they need in the moment. So that's kind of what I think writing for kids especially needs to do.
That's beautiful. So you're an alum of the MFA program, as has been said, here at FDU. And since this is homecoming, could you reminisce about your experience in the program and, you know, talk about how it helped you to become the writer you are?
Yeah, I think it's wild because 2016 feels like forever ago. Also, just like you said, it was, you know, 5 years or 4 years ago now. Jeez, 4 years ago. But you know, I think for me, what the MFA really gave me was, you know, a community, which I think I really needed, that kind of support group. So I was in the young adult program. So my mentors, I worked with Donna Freitas and Elliot Schaefer. And as mentors, I couldn't have asked for better mentors. I feel like they gave me the confidence that I needed to both approach writing as, you know, I don't think I would have been able to write as honestly and about as difficult and complex content without their help, being like, you should, you know, just write what you need to write kind of thing. And gave me the confidence to kind of do that. But I also, you know, I still, there's the community in general. I still, me and a few of, you know, the friends that I graduated the program with, we meet usually on Thursdays, not tonight because I'm here, but we meet on Thursdays to just talk about writing. you know, I see people all the time. We're always texting if we need, because you know it's a strenuous, stressful business. And I feel like it's important not to feel alone in it, and that's a lot of what I took after the MFA. It was just I never feel alone in it. So.
That's good. I love that. So I'm sure there's some new writers in the audience who are listening. A couple of my students are here. I was called my undergraduates. And I was wondering if, do you have any advice for people who are just starting out to write, who hope to publish a novel one day?
Yeah, I always give the same piece of advice. It's that, you know, resilience is key. You know, in something like this, and when you talk to someone who's been published, I get to talk about all the fun and exciting things that, you know, but it didn't come without rejection. It didn't come without tears. And you know, the agent I have now wasn't my first agent. So I remember, you know, going through the whole misery of the querying process and getting an agent and then losing the agent and realizing that I had to go through that process again. And then, you know, you just sit and cry. But, you know, you do have to just keep pushing through. Not every book is going to sell. Not every book is going to be the one. I've shelved books. I've lost agents, you know, so it's just, you have to keep pushing, because otherwise I feel like there's so many reasons not to keep going, and you just have to kind of hold on to your reasons to keep going and use those to push you forward. That's I think the best advice that I can give, because, you know, you can say, you know, write as often as possible and whatnot, but everyone's different in those ways. So, you know, just try and keep going.
You're absolutely right, though. People don't see the dark side of being a writer. They see, right, there's a lot of there. You're right. Even really successful writers experience rejection all the time.
Yeah.
So, or quite often. So it's important. That's a really important point. Well, maybe it's time. Let's see. I have a bunch more questions, and Nicole and I could talk all night, but I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat, so we can let the audience in a little bit. So let's see.
I'm so happy you all came out on like 8 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We have a question from Grace. Have you ever wanted to write a novel that's different from the genres of what you've already written?
I really enjoy writing in a contemporary. So I write contemporary, you know, middle grade books, and I'm happy there. I've been happy there. I don't know if I'd go anywhere else, but I do. I did start branching out into other age groups, mostly younger. I don't think I want to write older yet, but I have tried my hand at a chapter book. I recently sold a couple picture books.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So I've branched out in that way, but I'm always willing to see what happens, but I'm really comfortable and happy where I'm at right now. So kind of sticking there for now.
We have a question from your old professor, Elliot Schrafer. Actually, he's very young, but I don't mean former professor, Elliot Schrafer, says, loving the conversation. I'm curious about what you see as the current strengths of the children's literature, and what might be where there might be room for growth as far as the kinds of stories that are being told. Good question.
Yeah, really good question. So as far as, you know, the strengths of children's literature, I think they've made really great strides in diversifying the shelves in the past handful of years in ways that I think that other places and other pieces of media can learn to start catching up. I think that again, you know, you're really keeping the kids in mind, and you're talking about windows and mirrors, and you know, we've been talking about what books are available to all diverse voices and kids. And so I think, you know, there are more LGBTQ middle grade books, whereas, you know, 5 years ago there was 1, 2, you know, I don't know the exact number, but a very, very small few. if you could find very many at all. And now, you know, there is a wide berth. I do think that there's a lot of more, you know, there's room for growth in terms of more like intersections of, you know, if you're going to have LGBTQ books, there's maybe, out of all of the LGBTQ middle grade books, there's maybe 2 written by you know, Black authors that are told from, you know, Black characters' point of views. There's, you know, still very, very few transgender stories out there. So I think that while everything is growing, we can't yet get complacent, because there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of room and a lot of stories that need to be told. And talking about other genres, even, you know, there could be more books that aren't necessarily contemporary LGBTQ stories, you know, just queer kids, you know, going on adventures just like straight kids, you know. So I think there's, in a lot of ways, there's room there for growth still. I should real quick, I'm going to share my screen. So I have an anthology, hang on. I have an anthology that is coming out in the fall that I'm editing with Catherine Locke, who is another young adult author. And it is coming out with Knopf, and we just got the cover not that long ago, but it is a middle grade queer anthology.
Great.
So I'm really excited about this because it's, you know, it's me trying to help get as many, you know, different queer stories available to as many kids as needs them. You know, so we tried to diversify it as much as we could. We tried to get every, you know, letter of the acronym, every different flag that we could. There's different genres. So you have, you know, have fantasy, you have contemporary, you have coming out stories, you have stories where, you know, queer kids are just adopting cats and going about their lives in normal ways. There's a couple of short story graphic novels. There's a short story in verse. So we tried to get as many different things as possible. And I think that, you know, publishing as a whole can hopefully try and start doing the same. But yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful just contribution to the community. You know, that's what we call being a good literary citizen. That you put that you're working on that. That's great. There's sort of along the lines of what you've been talking about. There's a question from Cassidy. She said, have you faced any challenges with trying to be as open as possible writing about an LGBTQ plus experience for children to relate to or have the outlet they need, especially when the media has just started opening up to accepting these relationships? For example, in animated shows like She-Ra on Netflix, Legend of Korra, The Owl House, and Adventure Time.
Yeah, I do want to say that it has been overwhelmingly positive. Like I said, publishing is changing, people are changing, kids are looking for these books, people are being more supportive, the conversations are happening. So, you know, I do want to say that the experience has been overwhelmingly positive. Challenges again come at that gatekeeping level. So I've had teachers come up to me at conference and basically, you know, along the lines of, you know, I would have liked this book, but kind of things. So my first book, you know, is about the father-daughter relationship and his undiagnosed bipolar. And so you get a lot of, this would be a great story if it would just focus on the mental health and didn't have any queer content in it. It's one issue too many kind of thing, as if, you know, queer kids can't have issues as well outside of their queerness. Or you have, you know, you hear about schools that, you know, won't put your book on the shelves. I've had, you know, school visits where they've canceled. And wow. They don't necessarily come out and say, because this is a queer book, but it's implied that there's been pushback. So things like that on that level, but, you know, it's, I wouldn't say I ever took it personally, but on some level you have to. And then after a while, I just, you know, you have to decide kind of the pros are worth the few challenges. And, you know, I know that the kids they see what's happening around them, so they know when you're fighting for them, and they can see when you're giving up. So despite the challenges, it's, you know, it's always been worth it for me.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I think it's one of the wonderful things about your books is that there are multiple, I wouldn't call them issues, I would call them themes, but you know, that's what makes them complex, and you know, more satisfying to read, I think. So that's what I would say to that teacher. I want to say that so we have here Amanda Ramirez. Hi, Amanda, who is one of our beloved undergrad alums and an alum of the MFA, and she is now herself an editor of children's books. And she said, "Not a question, I just love you, Nicole." So passing that on.
I love Amanda as well. Amanda's wonderful. She's, you know, we talk about publishing and the you know, growth it's made. And Amanda, you know, she's behind the scenes as an editor. I think she's really doing really great work. She's at Simon & Schuster, and she's, you know, editing and getting really great voices published. So
and an amazing writer herself.
Yes, absolutely.
Can't wait for her book to come out. Let's see. We have a question from Deanna. Thanks for sharing your great works. How do you introduce content so that children can learn safe places, and if depressive symptoms escalate, that there is help out there?
So what I try to do, and it's, you know, it's a balance, because obviously I'm not, you know, like a therapist, and I don't know these children, and I don't know their specific struggles. So you don't want to take on that kind of mantle either. But what I try and do is that I try in my books to give them more or less examples of a support system and where to find support system, and, you know, how to seek out those support systems, who's there for you, who's maybe not there for you, and if they're not, who can be in their place. And it's one of those things where I try to just show them I try to just show them that they're not alone, and that they're okay, that there's nothing wrong with who they are. And then I feel like for me, since, you know, again, I can't necessarily help, I don't know everyone's situation, and there's only so much that I can do. I try and just, if they feel like they don't have a support system, if they feel like they're alone in that moment, I try and give them a support system within these fictional worlds. And, you know, I think that I also just kind of push the ideas that to normalize it. And I think that helps too, to normalize therapy, to normalize medications, to normalize finding the people that you're comfortable asking help from, to kind of recognize that it's okay that I feel this way. It's okay to find the people that I'm comfortable seeking out to talk to about this. And then with How to Become a Planet in particular, at the end, we did include resources, because I think if I'm going to introduce these ideas, I want to give them safe places and safe people to reach out to, since I can't do that, and I don't know what their situation is, so I don't know who's safe in their own lives to reach out to. So I did my best to kind of provide them with resources that hopefully, if they need, they have that. But that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's really well put, that you create the safe spaces in the fiction so that they, you know, that they can enter those spaces in the story. See, we have a question from Brianna. How long does it take you to write a book?
So it varies for me. I'm actually a really fast writer, so I always feel bad answering this question because I feel like I'm setting unrealistic expectations for other people. I'm fast, yes, but it's just who I am as a person. If I get an idea, I get like manic about it, and I have to just sit and pound it out, and it kind of like consumes me. So, you know, to write a book, I'm trying to think to give you a realistic idea, because I've written a lot during quarantine, because that's been my coping mechanism. So, you know, for me, I guess at most maybe from start to finish a month, let's say. And then
wow.
Yeah. ship it off to my agent, who's always like, please stop sending me new things.
Wow. But then there's an editing process, right? And a revision process. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually prefer revising to drafting. I think because then I'm not as manic. I could sit back and actually absorb everything and build on what I've started. But yeah, I write fast, so not everyone needs to be like me. Please don't be like me.
Wow, it's amazing. That's really wonderful. So we have another wonderful alum here, Tiffany Berryman, who says, YA in the house. Nicole is a gem. Since I am a basic chick, can you talk about your writing process? You started to talk about that a little bit.
So for me, I get an idea. I always start with a character. I'm a very character-driven writer. Plot comes way later, if at all. Sometimes I'm like, oh shoot, I need a plot for all this. So I come up with a character and I know that character really well, and I just kind of sit down and I just go. I can't plan, I can't plot, I can't sit and outline. Mostly because I feel like after I'm done outlining, I'm like, okay, I'm done, and then nothing happens. So I just sit down and I just draft. I see where the story goes. I don't edit as I go. I just kind of sit down and go. And usually I know where I want the character to end up, at least. So then it's just getting them pretty much emotionally from A to B and figuring out how to do that while I go. And then I finish. And I will admit, I draft short. So my drafts are a lot shorter than my finished books, my early drafts. So usually my early drafts, just to give you an example, are around like 40,000 words. And then my finished books are all around 55-ish. And so then when I get to actually revise, I have a couple of people who I trust with those early short drafts. I get their feedback. This is my, revising is my favorite part. So I'll sit and revise for a while from there, and kind of build on that, which is my favorite part. On a basic level, Tiffany, I can't write to music. I hate writing to music. I get really distracted, but I can't write to silence either. So I usually have like the Food Network on or something like really simple on the TV that I don't need to pay attention to, but just is on in the background for background noise. So that's pretty much my process. And I'm an afternoon writer, I say, because I'm not a morning person. And if I write too late, I don't sleep because I can't turn it off. So between the hours of like noon and 2 are my golden hours.
Wow. Well, I think we're just about out of time. Nicole, this has been amazing. I want to say revising is my favorite part too.
Yes,
just so, I think that's a thing. And this was fun talking to you. So nice to see you virtually. So nice to have so many people here to be part of our conversation. I wonder if we can all unmute to give Nicole a round of applause for her time and her work. And also, again, please check out her books. We've got the links in the chat. I encourage you all to go buy the books. So I'm going to give you a round of applause. I hope. Yeah.